Alright guys, I decided to do a little assembly, disassembly video of the production Strix and kind of address the things that I see people have trouble with. So I'm going to go ahead and take apart this micro build and install this ZirCuTi kit. So you got T8 hardware all around, so it's really all you need, and Loctite and lubrication, which I'm gonna do this without Loctite and lube, and then I'll make a separate video addressing Loctite and lube, and also a pin vise or drill. So I like to start on the lock side. So the first step, take it out of lockup and or detent, and then just crack your pivot loose. Then you could go ahead and loosen up your body screws. And if it spins the whole assembly, I've always been able to just go ahead and hold it with my thumb. I've never had a problem where I need to get two drivers to do that. Then you could use the pressure of your lock bar to help you pop them out, which that one did automatically. And then kind of hold it together, fighting your lock bar pressure. Take out your pivot. The whole thing will come apart. Now, on pretty much everything except for the ZirCuTi, you should be able to pull the backspacer off easily. Now, this is where I see a lot of people have issue, especially if they use Loctite, where they can't hold this and thread this out. So they make a special tool for holding cylindrical objects like this. It's called a pin vise. You can buy this kind that has an adjustable chuck, or ones that are specific for a size that have a collet in there. And they range from super cheap to super expensive, but you probably already have a drill, which is essentially a pin vise on a stand. What you don't want to do is use any power at all. Take your battery off if you're don't trust yourself, because the worst thing you could do is score this little locating pin, because it is a precision ground pin that is designed to be a perfect slip fit, which locates your backspacer. And if you score that up, you could throw a burr and it won't fit in there anymore, or you can make it too small and your backspacer will rattle or whatever. So what you do is just go ahead and just hand tight, try not to scratch up your titanium. Nice, and just hand tight, and that'll hold it, so that way you could pop that screw loose. Easy peasy. All right, another issue that I see people have, it's not so common with the satin ones, but when you have the DLC ones sometimes, or the ZirCuTi ones, sometimes the pivot collar will like to get stuck in there. The easiest way to get that out is use a tooth of your Torx head, come in from the inside and just grab it and push it out this way. Or you might have to, it's super tight, you might have to come like one side or the other side, so you get to fall out. Same with the hardened race. So these are usually pretty sticky. They're loose fit, but they're just sticky usually from lubrication that gets underneath there. I'm gonna leave it in for this video because I usually just leave them in anyways. Now, pocket clip, pretty self-explanatory. Now, lock bar insert. You got one little short screw. Now, the lock bar insert is a press fit into the frame, and you should never remove it unless you absolutely have to for whatever reason. I can't think of a reason why you would ever need to remove your lock bar insert unless you're modding the knife and doing a sandblast finish or something like that. The reason is because this is hardened steel and it's titanium. Hardened steel is harder than titanium, obviously. So the more you push this in and pull it out, the more you're messing up and wearing away the pocket that it sits in. So you don't want to remove that unless you absolutely have to. But if you had to remove it, the easiest way to do that is take one of your longer screws, like your pocket clip. I'm not even going to do it for the video. I'm just going to show you how to do it. And get your threads started. Just started. So that way your screw is sticking proud like that. And then you could press it down on the table, press on the head of your screw on the table, and pop the whole thing out cleanly. Like I said, don't do that unless you absolutely have to. All right, let's go ahead and reassemble this with the ZirCuTi kit. So on the production knife, I always start on the show side. On custom knives, I always start on the lock side. But with the production knives, the reason why I do that is because you have the captured pivot barrel, and the lock side has the nipple that rides on the flattened part, which keeps the pivot barrel from spinning. So I start with it like this, right? So the non-torque side, then the flat side. Put that in, stop pin. Got a little bit of something right there. Get that gunk out of there. All right, so pivot collar, you know, it's a tight fit, so if you do like I just did and it goes in crooked, it's not gonna fit, pop back out. Just wanna make sure that it goes in evenly. Boom. All right, so the trick with the ZirCuTi, if all the other ones with the exception of ZirCuTi, you go ahead and install these. And this will slip right on. But if you ever installed a ZirCuTi backspacer, you know it's really hard to get on there. The reason is because, like I said, these are designed to be a slip fit. And on ZirCuTi, it's really tight because after it's a precision fit, you color it by heating it up, and all the different alloys of zirconium and titanium expand and contract at different rates, and they don't always go back to the same dimension. That's why the ZirCuTi kit's going to be faster. So the easiest way to do a ZirCuTi is to just press it in. You might have to like push it on the table, press it in, get your locating pins kind of somewhat centered in there. All right, for bearings, it doesn't really matter which way they go. I like to go with the cup side out from the blade. That just makes it so that way it's harder for dust to get in there, because that pocket's deeper than the pocket that's on the blade. Right? Now, this part right here is where it seems like everybody has the biggest trouble, is aligning the flat part of the pivot barrel to the nipple that's on there. Most of the time when people say, hey, my knife's off-centered or the action sucks or whatever, it's because you didn't get this lined up right. So just go ahead and Drop your backspacer in there. You could even put your screw, go ahead and put your body screws in this side so you don't have to worry about them later. Just loose, you don't have to go super tight. Actually, it's better to go loose because then it's easier to line things up when you have a little bit of play. So just loose, just so it doesn't fall out. And then how you do this is I always grab the blade here and then I put my thumb on the pivot. So that way I rotate them together. So that way if I need to rotate this pivot a little bit, you know, it's easier to rotate everything together. And I try to get it perfectly so that way the flat part is facing straight down. And then you can sit here and mess with it back and forth, fighting that lock bar pressure. Remember, you don't ever do this out of when it's either in detent or lockup position because you don't have any play. If you hear my backspacer body screws just clipped in, and then rotate it so it's there. All right, it's not perfectly lined up yet. Sorry, I'm trying to do this looking not through the camera. All right, boom, it's lined up right there. And then go ahead, you know, I'm squeezing, I'm pinching pretty hard right here because I'm keeping everything lined up. Pivot collar, pivot screw, and then go ahead and tighten it just to its seats. So that way you're making sure that you got your stop pin shoulders perfectly in, your bearings are lined up, they're not crooked, nothing's crooked. And then go ahead and just come off just a little bit. And that'll give you enough play down here. Make sure that you're lined up perfectly here and your screws will go in smooth. All right, so two longest screws are going to be your two longest screws are going to be your pocket clip screws. All your medium length screws are going to be your body screws. All right, now that everything is lined up, go ahead and tighten everything down. Like I said, I've never had an issue. Like if the whole thing spins, that probably means you or the previous owner put way too much Loctite. You should be able to press it with your finger and hold it with your finger and not have to use a second driver to keep everything from spinning. Nice and snug, not over tightened. Now tightening the pivot, right? Come out of lockup, hold your lock bar out. Feel that if you have blade play, tighten it just till your blade play goes away. And then you should be perfectly centered. If you're not perfectly centered, you're either too tight or too loose. So you could also just tighten it till it gets perfectly centered. And then flick it a few times just to make sure everything's good. Like I said, if it goes and it, you know, binds in some area, it's because you didn't get that pivot perfectly lined up. Go ahead and throw this back in there. When you're doing these tiny little screws, oops, that's the wrong screw. right, could have put this in earlier, but go ahead and put your lock insert, screw back in there. It's probably better to do that when the knife is apart, so you can make sure that you put the right screw in. You didn't put like a pocket clip screw in there and it's sticking all the way through. But yeah, and then pocket clip, pretty self-explanatory. So a lot of times, you know, it's easiest just to get it lined into the pocket first. And you know, you might have to, depending on how tight your pocket clip is, you might have to hold it here to kind of fight the pressure of your pocket clip to get your screws going. All right, easy peasy. Oh, I put the wrong pocket clip on. Oh well, that's good for the demonstration. All right. So the only other thing with the bolster lock that you might have an issue with is when you go to install this screw, don't tighten it all the way. Leave it a little bit loose until you get the backspacer screws tightened in, because you know, there's a little bit of play, and if you don't get these holes lined up because you have this one screwed all the way down, you won't be able to get these screws lined up all the way. So just when you put these on, just, you know, snug them, come off a little bit. That'll give you a little bit of play, so that way you can line up all these screws. And then finally, when you're done, line that one up. This one's underneath the pocket clip, so just have the pocket clip be the last thing you put on. Easy day.